Do you remember December evenings in the 1970s? When entire neighborhoods worked outside together, when the sound of saws cutting through tree trunks mixed with children's laughter and carolers moving house to house?
On the fifth day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 5 golden rings, more honey.
Between 1970 and 1979, 30 specific Christmas activities brought families together through physical work and shared effort. Today, most people order decorations online and stream holiday movies. These weren't entertainments you watched. They were traditions you earned through cold fingers, hours of labor, and glitter that never came out. Number 23 will surprise you. The activity requiring entire neighborhoods to coordinate by handwritten notes passed door to door. In the 1970s, buying a Christmas tree meant piling the family into a station wagon and driving to a tree farm with a handsaw. You'd bundle up, pack thermoses of hot chocolate, and spend the morning walking through rows of living evergreens. Dad would shake branches, testing for freshness. Mom would veto trees that were too tall. Kids would run ahead, claiming trees as theirs. When you found the tree, Dad would kneel in the snow and start sawing. Back and forth for 15 minutes. Your hands would freeze. Your knees would soak through. But when the tree finally fell, there was accomplishment. You didn't just buy this tree, you cut it. You earned it. The drive home was triumphant. Tree strapped to the roof, sap dripping, the whole car smelling like Christmas. By the 1990s, pre-cut trees became the norm. Faster, easier, no saw required. Today, most people buy pre-cut trees or assemble artificial ones from boxes. The family tree-cutting expedition of the 70s, felled and forgotten. In the 1970s, families spent entire evenings stringing popcorn, garland by hand, kernel by kernel, for hours. You'd pop plain, unsalted popcorn and sit around the table with needles and thread. Pierce a kernel, slide it down, repeat. It was tedious. Popcorn is fragile. Half the kernels would explode into dust. If you added cranberries, they'd squirt juice everywhere, staining your fingers pink. After 3 hours, you'd have maybe 10 feet of garland to drape over the tree. It looked rustic and handmade, but popcorn garland attracts pests, mice, ants, squirrels. Within a week, it would dry out and smell stale. By the 1980s, families gave up. Pre-made garlands were cheaper and didn't attract rodents. Today, popcorn garland is a Pinterest craft. Made once, photographed, then thrown away. The tedious popcorn garland tradition of the 70s popped its last kernel. In the 1970s, kids went caroling spontaneously. No adults, no rehearsals, just friends with songbooks and flashlights. You'd bundle up after dinner, knock on your friend's door, and walk the neighborhood collecting more kids along the way. You'd knock on doors, wait for someone to answer, and launch into Jingle Bells or Deck the Halls. Neighbors would smile, sometimes join in, often hand out cookies or candy canes. It wasn't about performance quality. Your voice could crack. You could forget words. It didn't matter. The act of showing up and singing was enough. Caroling was participation, not perfection. But by the 1990s, the tradition faded. Parents became cautious about kids roaming after dark. Neighborhoods became less connected. By the 2000s, caroling became organized, church groups with chaperones and planned routes. Today, unsupervised kids caroling door to door would seem suspicious. In the 1970s, many families made their own Christmas cards, hand-drawn, glitter-covered, and personalized. Mom would gather construction paper, scissors, glue, markers, and glitter. The family would sit at the kitchen table for an evening of card-making. You'd fold colored paper, draw Christmas trees or snowmen, cut pictures from magazines, and glue them on. Then came the glitter. Gold, silver, red, green, coating everything. Inside, you'd write personalized messages, not generic greetings, but actual notes. "We hope your new house is wonderful," or "Thanks for watching our dog." Every card was handwritten. Every card was unique. When people received them, they felt special because someone had spent hours making that card. By the 1980s, photo Christmas cards took over. One family photo printed 50 times. Fast, easy, professional. In the 1970s, Christmas specials aired once on a specific night, and if you missed them, you missed them. No DVR, no streaming, no rewatch button. Families would check TV Guide, circle the specials, and plan their schedules around them. Charlie Brown is on Wednesday at 8. Be home. When the night arrived, everyone would gather in the living room. No phones, no distractions, just the family watching together. Mom might make popcorn, kids would sit on the floor. The show would start, and for 30 minutes, you were together. You couldn't pause or rewind. If you missed a scene, it was gone. That scarcity made it special. The next day at school, everyone would talk about it. If you missed it, you were out of the loop until next year. We've covered 5 activities so far: chopping trees, stringing popcorn, caroling, making cards, gathering for TV specials, and if you remember any of these, you know Christmas in the 70s required time, effort, and togetherness.
Like most people, I'm doing my last-minute shopping.
But we're just getting started, because the next activity, every family did it. It took hours, and it created one of the most iconic photos of the decade. Stick around. This one's a classic. In the 1970s, baking Christmas cookies wasn't just for your family, it was for everyone. Neighbors, teachers, mail carriers, co-workers, and we're talking dozens of cookies. Mom would start planning in early December, lists of who needed cookies, what types to bake, how many dozens per person. Then she'd stock up. Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, vanilla, chocolate chips, sprinkles. The baking took days. Sugar cookies, snickerdoodles, gingerbread men, chocolate crinkles. The kitchen would be in constant use. Oven on all day, cooling racks everywhere, flour on every counter. Your house would smell like cinnamon and butter for a week. Once baked, you'd assemble plates, paper plates wrapped in plastic tied with ribbon. Each plate got a variety of cookies. Then came deliveries. You'd walk to every house on your street. The elderly couple, the new family, the neighbor you only waved at. "Merry Christmas! We made cookies for you." They'd smile, thank you, and a few days later, they'd show up at your door with a plate of their cookies. It was reciprocal. You gave, they gave. By mid-December, your counter was lined with plates from other families. It wasn't about the cookies, it was about connection. But by the 1990s, life got busier. Store-bought cookies became good enough. Neighborhoods became less connected. Today, baking still happens, but rarely for the entire neighborhood. In the 1970s, looking at Christmas lights was a planned family outing. No apps, no GPS, just spontaneous exploration. After dinner, Dad would announce, "Let's go look at lights." Everyone would grab coats. Mom might pack hot chocolate. Kids would pile into the back seat. Then you'd just drive. No destination. Just slow cruising through neighborhoods looking for houses lit up with C7 bulbs and blow molds. Dad would drive 10 MEF, narrating, "Look at that nativity scene. That house has 1,000 lights." Kids would press faces against cold windows, pointing, comparing. Some neighborhoods became famous for their displays. Entire streets would coordinate. Blow molds on every lawn, roof lines outlined in colored bulbs. It was a neighborhood arms race of Christmas spirit. Driving through those streets felt magical. You'd turn the corner and suddenly, boom, The world was glowing. Sometimes Dad would stop the car. You'd sit there drinking cocoa, staring at the lights. No phones, no photos, just being there together. By the 2000s, apps emerged. You could Google "best lights near me" and get curated lists with addresses. In the 1970s, Advent calendars were paper chains, long loops of construction paper you made yourself. Mom would cut colored paper into strips. You'd curl each strip into a ring, glue the ends, then link them together. 25 loops total, one for each day until Christmas. You'd hang the chain on the wall. Every morning you'd tear off one loop, rip, one day closer. It was simple, tactile, visual. You could see the days disappearing. You could hold the countdown. Kids loved it. They'd race to tear off the loop each morning. Parents loved it because it was free. Just paper and glue. Some families wrote activities on each loop. Bake cookies today. Watch a movie. So tearing off the loop revealed that day's special plan. By the 1990s, commercial Advent calendars flooded the market. Chocolate calendars, Lego calendars, every door hiding a prize. Kids stopped caring about counting down, they just wanted the treats. By the 2000s, luxury Advent calendars cost $100 or more. The paper chain couldn't compete. Too simple, too boring. In the 1970s, Christmas Eve church services weren't optional. They were expected. Even families who didn't attend church regularly would go on Christmas Eve. Mom would lay out the good clothes days in advance. Boys in dress pants and clip-on ties, girls in dresses and patent leather shoes, Dad in a suit, you dressed up. This wasn't just church, this was Christmas Eve church. The service started at 7 or 8 p.m. You'd drive through cold, dark streets and arrive at a packed parking lot. Families everywhere, all dressed up. The sanctuary would be dimly lit, candles and soft lights. Pine garland on the altar, a Christmas tree glowing in the corner, the smell of evergreen and wax. It felt sacred. The service would include scripture readings, a sermon, and the moment everyone waited for, the candlelight portion. Near the end, the lights would dim further. Ushers would hand out small white candles with cardboard drip guards. The pastor would light his candle, then light the candles of people in the front row. Person by person, row by row, the light would spread. You'd tilt your candle toward the next person, flame jumping from wick to wick. Slowly, the sanctuary would glow. 10 activities down, 20 more to go. And if you're keeping count, you've just realized something. Almost none of these feel mandatory anymore. Some became inconvenient. Some felt old-fashioned. Some just couldn't compete with modern life. But the next activity, it required an entire afternoon, a ladder, and serious risk-taking. And every dad in America did it. Keep watching. This one's dangerous. In the 1970s, leaving cookies for Santa was a sacred ritual, carefully planned and lovingly executed by children who believed. This wasn't store-bought cookies tossed on a plate. These were homemade cookies baked specifically for Santa. On Christmas Eve afternoon, Mom would set aside dough. These are for Santa. Kids would help bake them, rolling dough, cutting shapes, decorating with icing and sprinkles. These cookies had to be perfect. Once cooled, you'd choose the best ones, not the burnt ones, the best. You'd arrange them on a special plate, maybe one with Santa painted on it. Then came the milk, cold, fresh, in a glass, sometimes a napkin, sometimes a note. "Dear Santa, thank you for the presents. I've been good. Love, Jennifer." Some families left a carrot for the reindeer. You'd set everything near the tree or hearth. Somewhere Santa would see it. Then you'd go to bed. But you believed. You believed so hard that sleep felt impossible. You'd strain your ears for sleigh bells, reindeer hooves, Santa's boots. In the 1970s, putting up outdoor Christmas lights wasn't something you hired professionals to do. There were no light installation services, no "call us and we'll handle it." It was a DAD project. And it was dangerous. On a cold December Saturday, Dad would announce, "Today we're putting up the lights." He'd drag the ladder out, a tall, wobbly aluminum ladder that had seen better days. He'd haul out boxes of C7 bulbs, tangled extension cords, and metal clips. Then he'd suit up, work gloves, old coat, hat, and he'd start climbing. Mom would stand at the ladder's base, holding it steady, shouting instructions. "More to the left. That section's crooked. You missed a spot." Kids would watch from the driveway, either fascinated or terrified. "Don't fall, Dad." Dad would inch along the roof line, clipping lights to gutters, draping them along eaves, stringing them across the porch railing. Every bulb had to be screwed in individually. If one didn't work, he'd have to climb down, test the strand, find the dead bulb, replace it, climb back up. This took hours, and it was cold. Fingers would go numb. The metal ladder would freeze. The wind would make the ladder sway. It was legitimately dangerous. Dads fell, broke bones, ended up in emergency rooms, but they did it anyway. Because when those lights finally turned on, when the house glowed red, green, blue, yellow, it was worth it. Your house was lit, visible from blocks away, a beacon of Christmas spirit. Neighbors would honk as they drove past. "Nice lights." Kids would stand in the yard, staring up in awe. In the 1970s, every classroom in December was covered in handmade decorations, not store-bought, not printed, handmade by kids in art class. You'd spend afternoons cutting, gluing, coloring construction paper into Christmas shapes: trees, stars, bells, stockings, snowflakes, candy canes. Every decoration was different. Some kids were meticulous, perfect lines, coloring inside the boundaries. Others were chaotic, crooked edges, too much glue, marker bleeding through. But they all went up. Teachers would hang them from ceilings, tape them to windows, pin them to bulletin boards. The classroom transformed into a DIY Christmas wonderland. Parents loved it. They'd come to holiday concerts and smile. "That snowflake is definitely Tommy's. I recognize the glitter explosion." It was personal, imperfect, real. Making these decorations was part of the school experience. You'd sit at your desk with scissors and paper, tongue sticking out in concentration, trying to cut the perfect snowflake or star. The classroom would smell like Elmer's glue and crayons. Bits of paper would litter the floor. By the end of art class, everyone's hands would be covered in glue residue and marker stains. But the result? A classroom that felt like Christmas. Every surface covered in handmade joy. Some decorations would fall. The tape would lose its stick. Snowflakes would flutter to the ground. But that was part of it. The imperfect, handmade charm. By the 2000s, store-bought decorations replaced handmade ones. Teachers could buy pre-printed sets, matching, polished, professional, faster, easier, less mess, no glue, no paper scraps, no chaos. The construction paper chaos of the 70s classroom, cut out and discarded. Today, kids still make crafts, but they're sent home, not displayed school-wide. The tradition of covering every classroom surface with chaotic handmade Christmas decorations, gone. In the 1970s, gingerbread houses weren't kits you bought at the store. They were built from scratch, engineered, baked, and assembled by hand. You'd bake sheets of gingerbread dough, cut out walls and roof panels with a knife, and use royal icing as glue to hold everything together. It was hard. The walls would crack. The icing wouldn't hold. The roof would collapse. You'd spend hours on it, and it would still look lopsided and unstable, but when it finally stood, A wonky, imperfect gingerbread house decorated with gumdrops, candy canes, and too much frosting. It was yours. Kids would hover around the kitchen table, watching, waiting for their turn to add decorations. Can I put the gumdrops on? Can I add the roof? Can I eat this piece that broke? Parents would get frustrated. The icing wouldn't set fast enough. The walls would lean. One wrong move and the whole structure would collapse. But you'd persist. You'd prop up walls with cans while the icing dried. You'd reinforce weak spots with extra frosting. You'd carefully place the roof panels, holding your breath, hoping they'd stay. When it was finally done, hours later, you'd step back and admire it. It wasn't perfect. It was crooked. The icing was lumpy, but it was handmade, and kids would beg to eat it immediately. By the 1990s, pre-made gingerbread house kits took over. Everything pre-cut, pre-measured, pre-packaged. Just assemble, decorate, done. Faster, easier, less frustrating, but not the same. Today, most families use kits. The scratch-built, structurally questionable, lovingly imperfect gingerbread house tradition of the 70s crumbled into history. In the 1970s, wrapping paper and ribbon were precious. You didn't just rip through them on Christmas morning and throw them away. You saved them. On Christmas morning, after opening a gift, you'd carefully peel off the tape, unwrap the paper without tearing it, fold it neatly and set it aside. Ribbons and bows, rolled up and saved. Mom would collect it all, smooth out wrinkles, and store it in a box. Next year, that same paper would wrap new gifts. Some pieces of wrapping paper lasted years. You'd recognize them. Wait, this is the same paper Grandma used last year. It wasn't about being cheap. It was about not being wasteful. In the 70s, you didn't throw away things that could be reused. Wrapping paper, ribbon, bows, they were reusable, so you reused them. Unwrapping presents became a careful operation. Don't rip it, Mom would remind you. You'd slowly peel the tape, trying not to tear the paper. Sometimes you'd succeed. Sometimes the paper would rip anyway, and that piece would be too damaged to save. But the good pieces, folded neatly, stored in a dedicated box ready for next Christmas. The ribbons were the easiest. You'd just untie them, smooth them out, roll them up. Gold ribbons, red ribbons, curly ribbons that had lost some bounce but still worked. By the 1990s, wrapping paper became so cheap that reusing it felt pointless. You could buy giant rolls for a few dollars. Why carefully unwrap and fold when you could just rip and toss? Today, most wrapping paper is ripped apart on Christmas morning and thrown directly into garbage bags. The thrifty, waste-free, carefully folded wrapping paper tradition of the 70s, torn apart and discarded. We've just passed the halfway mark, 15 activities down, 15 to go. And if you've stuck around this long, you're starting to see the pattern. Christmas in the 1970s wasn't something you consumed, it was something you created. But the activity we're about to cover next? It was the most dangerous tradition on this list, and every family did it anyway. Stay tuned, this one burned bright. In the 1970s, Christmas music didn't stream from Spotify. It came on vinyl records. You'd pull out Bing Crosby, Nat King Cole, or Gene Autry, carefully remove the record from its sleeve, set it on the turntable, and lower the needle. Crackle, pop, hiss. Then the music would start. No skipping tracks, no shuffling, no playlists. You listened to the entire album in order, front to back. It was intentional. You sat and listened. Or you did other things, wrapping presents, baking cookies, decorating, while the music played in the background. When side A finished, you'd flip the record to side B. That pause, that interruption, was part of the experience. Music was something you engaged with, not background noise that played endlessly. In the 1970s, seeing Santa meant going to a department store. Macy's, Sears, J.C. Penney, Gimbel's, not the mall, the department store. Santa would be set up in a special area, surrounded by fake snow, a throne-like chair, and a line of kids stretching down the aisle. You'd wait for an hour, sometimes more. Kids would get restless, fidgeting, whining. Parents would bribe them. "If you're good, we'll get ice cream after." You'd watch the line slowly inch forward. You'd see other kids climb onto Santa's lap, whisper their wishes, hop down, getting closer. Finally, your turn. You'd walk up to Santa, this bearded stranger in a red suit who somehow knew if you'd been naughty or nice. You'd climb onto his lap, or stand next to him if you were too scared, and tell him what you wanted for Christmas. A bike, a Barbie dream house, a puppy. Santa would listen, nod, maybe ask a question or two. Then he'd hand you a candy cane. A photographer hired by the store would snap one photo. That's it. One shot. No retakes, no, "let me check the screen." The flash would go off. Done. A week later, you'd come back to the store and buy the photo. 1 5/7 print, maybe a few wallet-sized copies for grandparents. That was your Santa photo for the year. No digital copies, no instant preview. Just one physical print that would go into a photo album or frame. By the 2000s, mall Santas started to decline. Fewer department stores, fewer families willing to wait in line. More kids figuring out Santa wasn't real by age 6. Today, some malls still have Santas, but the packed lines, the hour-long waits, the universal expectation that every family would visit Santa. In the 1970s, some families sent Christmas telegrams, short, formal messages delivered by mail or read over the phone. It was expensive, so it felt special. You'd go to the post office or call Western Union and dictate your message, usually no more than 20 words. They'd send it to a relative far away. The recipient would receive it on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. It was formal, exciting, rare. "Merry Christmas, stop thinking of you, stop love the Johnsons, stop." Telegrams had a formality that regular mail didn't. The all-caps text, the word "stop" instead of periods. It felt official, important. Sending a telegram meant something mattered enough to pay extra for immediate delivery. Families would send them to relatives overseas or across the country, places where a phone call was expensive and a letter would take too long. Receiving a telegram felt momentous. The messenger would deliver it to your door. You'd sign for it, open it, read the brief message. It was a connection across distance, delivered with urgency and care. By the 1990s, phone calls and greeting cards replaced telegrams entirely. In the 1970s, salt dough ornaments were a staple craft. Simple, cheap, and handmade. You'd mix flour, salt, and water, roll it out, cut shapes with cookie cutters, poke a hole for string, bake them, and paint them. They were fragile, prone to cracking, but handmade and personal. Kids would make them in school, at home, at church. Every tree had at least a few salt dough ornaments hanging from the branches. You'd paint them, trees, stars, candy canes, snowmen, and write your name on the back. Tommy, 1975. They weren't beautiful. The paint would be uneven, the shapes would be lumpy, but they were yours. Each year, you'd carefully unwrap them from tissue paper and hang them on the tree. Some would have cracks, some would be missing pieces, but you'd hang them anyway because they were memories. They represented a specific moment in time. A craft afternoon in 2nd grade, an evening with Grandma, a church activity. Salt dough ornaments were fragile. Drop one and it would shatter. Store them wrong and they'd crumble. But for a few years, they'd survive. A handmade testament to Christmas past. By the 2000s, pre-made ornaments were so cheap and durable that making salt dough versions felt pointless. In the 1970s, some families made advent calendars from scratch, 25 small envelopes or pockets, each hiding a surprise. Moms would spend weeks cutting, sewing, decorating felt or fabric calendars. Each pocket would be numbered 1 through 25. Every morning in December, kids would reach into that day's pocket and pull out a small treasure, a piece of candy, a tiny toy, a handwritten note. The anticipation was everything. You had no idea what was inside until you reached in. These calendars were personal. Parents controlled the contents. No cheap plastic junk. Just small, meaningful treasures. Making an advent calendar was labor-intensive. Cutting pockets, sewing them onto backing, embroidering numbers. It took hours. Then you had to fill all 25 pockets every year, shopping for small items, writing notes, stuffing envelopes. But the result was a calendar that would last for years, passed down through generations. Kids would wake up excited, run to the calendar, and discover that day's surprise. It was a daily ritual that built anticipation for Christmas. Some families made elaborate calendars, felt Christmas trees with pockets shaped like ornaments, fabric houses with numbered windows, wooden boxes with tiny drawers. Each one was unique, handmade with love. By the 1990s, commercial advent calendars flooded the market. Chocolate calendars, Lego calendars, beauty product calendars, pre-filled, pre-packaged, ready to go. No sewing, no filling, just buy, hang, open a door each day. Parents made the switch. Why spend 20 hours making a calendar when you could spend $10 buying one? Today, homemade advent calendars are still made by crafty parents, but they're niche. Most families buy pre-filled calendars, the handmade advent calendar tradition of the 70s, unpocketed. In the 1970s, burning a Yule log on Christmas Eve was a tradition, not a TV channel, not a YouTube video, an actual log burning in your actual fireplace. You'd select a large log, oak or birch, something dense that would burn slowly through the night, and bring it inside on Christmas Eve. This wasn't just throwing any piece of wood on the fire. The Yule log was chosen with intention. It had to be substantial, thick enough to burn for hours, dry enough to catch easily, but not so dry it would burn up too quickly. Some families would decorate the log before burning it, wrapping it with evergreen branches, tying ribbons around it, even carving the year into the bark. Dad would place it in the fireplace carefully, positioning it so it would burn evenly. He'd light it as the family gathered around. The Yule log symbolized warmth, protection, and the return of light during the darkest time of year. Burning it was meant to bring good luck for the coming year. Families would sit together in the glow of the fireplace, the only light in the room, watching the flames dance, telling stories, sipping hot cocoa or mulled cider. The fire would crackle and pop, the smell of burning wood would fill the house. Kids would get drowsy watching the hypnotic flames. Some families would save a piece of the partially burned log to use as kindling for next year's Yule log, a way of carrying luck forward from one Christmas to the next. It was cozy, primal, real. There was something deeply satisfying about gathering around actual fire, not a TV screen, not a digital image, but real flames providing real warmth. The ritual connected you to generations past who had done the same thing. Your grandparents, their grandparents, people throughout history gathering around fire during winter. But by the 1990s, fewer homes had working fireplaces. New construction often skipped fireplaces entirely. They were expensive to build, required maintenance, and central heating made them unnecessary. Existing fireplaces were often converted to gas. Cleaner, easier, safer. Push a button and fake logs would ignite with uniform flames. Gas fireplaces didn't require logs. They didn't need tending. They didn't create the ritual. In the 1970s, homemade fudge and candy were common Christmas gifts, personal, thoughtful, and made with effort. You'd spend entire afternoons making batches of chocolate fudge, peanut butter fudge, divinity, peppermint bark, peanut brittle, and toffee. Making fudge was tricky. You had to get the temperature exactly right, or it wouldn't set properly. Too hot, and it would be grainy. Too cool, and it would be runny. You'd stand over the stove with a candy thermometer, watching the temperature climb. 234 degrees, 236 degrees, waiting for that perfect moment to pull it off the heat. Then you'd pour it into a buttered pan, let it cool, cut it into squares, and wrap each piece individually in wax paper. Peanut brittle required even more precision. You'd boil sugar and corn syrup until it reached the hard crack stage, 300 degrees, then quickly stir in peanuts and pour it onto a greased baking sheet before it hardened. Divinity was the most challenging, whipping hot sugar syrup into beaten egg whites, timing it perfectly so the mixture would hold peaks but still be spreadable. But when it all worked, when the fudge set perfectly, and the brittle snapped cleanly, and the divinity held its shape, you felt accomplished. You'd arrange the candies on decorative plates or pack them into tins, wrap them with cellophane and ribbon, and give them to teachers, neighbors, co-workers, mail carriers. Homemade candy was a gift from the heart. It said, "I spent time making this specifically for you." People appreciated it. They'd save the tins. They'd comment on the flavor. They'd ask for recipes. Making candy wasn't just about the end product. It was about the process. Families would do it together. Kids would watch the thermometer. Everyone would taste test. The kitchen would smell like chocolate and caramelized sugar for days. But by the 1990s, the tradition started fading. Store-bought chocolates became sophisticated. Godiva, Lindt, Ghirardelli, you could buy beautifully packaged, professionally made chocolates that looked and tasted better than anything you could make at home. And they were convenient. No thermometers, no failed batches, no hours at the stove. People's tastes changed, too. Fudge and peanut brittle started feeling old-fashioned. Too sweet, too simple. In the 1970s, families read Christmas stories together on Christmas Eve. The Night Before Christmas, A Christmas Carol, The Little Match Girl, Gift of the Magi. This wasn't background noise while everyone stared at phones. This was the evening's entertainment. Everyone gathered in the living room, lights dimmed, fire crackling, one person reading aloud while everyone else listened. No TV, no distractions, just voices and imagination. It was quiet, intimate, intentional. Mom or Dad would pull out a worn book, pages yellowed, spine cracked from years of Christmas Eve readings, the same book their parents had read to them. Kids would snuggle under blankets, maybe sip hot chocolate, eyes wide as the story unfolded. Parents would read with expression, different voices for different characters, dramatic pauses, varied pacing. Scrooge would sound grumpy. Tiny Tim would sound small and hopeful. The ghost of Christmas, yet to come, would be ominous and terrifying. Reading A Christmas Carol wasn't just reciting words. It was performing the story, bringing it to life through voice alone. When you read aloud as a family, everyone experienced the story together. You laughed at the same moments. You felt tension at the same plot points. You reached the ending together. It created shared experience and shared memory. Kids would ask to hear their favorite parts again. Read the part where Scrooge wakes up on Christmas morning. They'd memorize lines. They'd anticipate what came next. These stories became part of the family's Christmas tradition, as essential as decorating the tree or opening presents. Some families would take turns reading. Dad would read a few pages, then pass the book to Mom. Older kids would read sections too, proud to contribute. The ritual of reading aloud created space for togetherness. In the 1970s, eggnog was made from scratch. Eggs, milk, heavy cream, sugar, vanilla, nutmeg, and sometimes a generous pour of rum or brandy. This wasn't opening a carton from the grocery store. This was raw eggs whipped with sugar until thick and pale, combined with cream and milk, flavored with freshly grated nutmeg and chilled until serving time. Making eggnog was a production. You'd separate eggs, yolks in one bowl, whites in another. You'd beat the yolks with sugar until the mixture turned pale yellow and ribbony. Then you'd slowly whisk in milk and cream, being careful not to curdle it. The egg whites would be beaten until they formed soft peaks, then gently folded into the yolk mixture, creating a light, frothy texture. Finally, you'd add vanilla extract and grate fresh nutmeg on top, the warm, spicy aroma filling the kitchen. For the adult version, Dad would add rum or brandy, sometimes bourbon or whiskey. The alcohol would cut through the richness, adding warmth and complexity. You'd serve it in special glasses, sometimes punch cups, sometimes small tumblers, with an extra sprinkle of nutmeg on top. Homemade eggnog was thick, rich, almost like drinking melted ice cream. It coated your mouth. It was a treat, not something you guzzled. Kids got the non-alcoholic version. Adults got the spiked version. Both were special, something you only had at Christmas. Making eggnog was part of the Christmas ritual. Families would make a big batch on Christmas Eve, serve it after dinner, and save leftovers for Christmas morning breakfast. The process of making it, cracking eggs, whipping them, carefully combining ingredients, was part of the tradition. Grandma had a recipe. Mom had a recipe. Recipes were handed down, slightly different in every family. Some families added cinnamon, some added cloves, some made it very boozy, some kept it mild. But every family's eggnog was unique, made with care, served with pride. By the 1990s, store-bought eggnog flooded the market. You could buy it by the carton, already mixed, already flavored. Just pour and drink. Convenient, consistent, safe, no raw eggs. It tasted fine. Not as rich, not as special, but fine. And it was so much easier than making it from scratch. People stopped buying egg separators, stopped grating fresh nutmeg, stopped whipping egg whites. In the 1970s, small-town Christmas parades were major events, the kind that brought out the entire town, shut down Main Street, and created memories that lasted a lifetime. These weren't big city parades with celebrity floats and television cameras. These were local parades, organized by the Chamber of Commerce, featuring hometown businesses, school bands, scout troops, and Santa arriving on a fire truck. But they were important. Everyone attended. You'd mark the date on your calendar weeks in advance. Schools would dismiss early. Businesses would close. The whole town would gather along Main Street. You'd arrive early to claim your spot on the sidewalk. Blankets spread out, folding chairs set up, kids bundled in coats and scarves, thermoses of hot chocolate passed around. The parade would start at one end of Main Street and proceed slowly down the middle of town, maybe a mile total. But it would take over an hour because every float would stop, every band would play. Every group would wave. The high school marching band would play Christmas songs, slightly off-key, but enthusiastic. The local dance studio would have a float with girls in sparkly costumes, shivering in the cold. The Boy Scouts would march in formation, carrying flags. Local businesses would sponsor floats. The hardware store, the diner, the car dealership, each decorated with garland, lights, and whatever creative theme they'd dreamed up. The mayor would ride in a convertible, waving. The homecoming queen would be there, wearing her crown and sash. Veterans would march, carrying their unit flags. And at the very end, always at the end, Santa would arrive. Sometimes he'd ride on a fire truck, waving from the back. Sometimes he'd have his own float, pulled by a tractor, surrounded by elves, high schoolers in costume. Sometimes he'd ride in a horse-drawn carriage, but his arrival was the climax. Kids would scream, parents would point, everyone would cheer. Santa would wave, throw candy, wish everyone a Merry Christmas. And then the parade would end, and everyone would walk home, candy in pockets, faces cold, spirits high. The parade was free. It was communal. It was tradition. Families would see neighbors they hadn't seen in months. You'd chat between floats. You'd comment on the decorations. You'd laugh at inside jokes about the local dentist's goofy float. In the 1970s, when wrapping paper ran out, and it often did, families used newspaper comics to wrap smaller gifts. You'd save the Sunday comics section, the thick, colorful insert filled with Peanuts, Garfield, The Far Side, Beetle Bailey, and use it as wrapping paper. It was resourceful, creative, and completely free. You'd spread out the comic section, place a small gift in the center, maybe a book, a small toy, a pair of socks, and wrap it like you would with regular paper. Tape it closed, maybe tie string or ribbon around it. The result? A gift wrapped in Snoopy and Charlie Brown, Dennis the Menace, or whatever comic strip happened to be on that page. Kids loved it. They'd identify which comics were on their gifts before even opening them. I got the Peanuts page. Mine has Garfield. This one has the Wizard of Id. It added an extra layer of fun to gift giving. The wrapping paper itself became part of the gift, something to read, something to laugh at, something unique. Some families would specifically save comics with Christmas themes: Charlie Brown's Christmas strips, winter-themed Garfield, holiday BC comics, to make the wrapping feel more festive. Others just used whatever comics happened to be in that Sunday's paper. But it always worked. The black and white or color-printed newsprint had a charm that store-bought paper didn't. It felt homemade, quirky, personal, and it was practical. Wrapping paper was expensive, especially if you had a big family and lots of gifts to wrap. A roll of paper might cost $2 or $3, which was significant in the 70s, but the Sunday newspaper? You were already buying it. The comics section was just sitting there after everyone had read it. Why not use it? It was the ultimate waste not, want not mentality. Some families would wrap all their smaller gifts in comics. Under the tree, you'd see a mix. Some gifts in traditional red and green paper, some in colorful newsprint featuring cartoon characters. It became part of the family's Christmas aesthetic. In the 1970s, DIY Christmas centerpieces were homemade works of art, natural, rustic, and created with materials gathered from your own backyard. The classic version involved pine cones, candles, and evergreen sprigs arranged on a tray or shallow bowl. You'd start by collecting pine cones, walking through woods or parks in late autumn, filling bags with pine cones of various sizes. Some families would gather them from their own property if they had pine trees. Once home, you'd clean them, brush off dirt, check for bugs, let them dry completely. Some people would bake them in a low oven to kill any remaining insects and open up the scales fully. Then came the creative part, spray painting. You'd take the pine cones outside, lay them on newspaper, and spray them with metallic paint, gold, silver, white, even copper or bronze. The paint would catch in the scales, creating a shimmering effect that transformed ordinary brown pine cones into something elegant and festive. While the pine cones dried, you'd prepare the base, usually a large, shallow tray, a wooden cutting board, or a decorative plate. Then you'd arrange pillar candles in the center, tall, thick candles in traditional Christmas colors, red, green, white, or gold. Around the candles, you'd arrange the painted pine cones, spacing them artfully. Then you'd tuck in sprigs of fresh evergreen, pine, spruce, cedar, or holly, filling gaps and adding that fresh Christmas scent. Some families added other natural elements: acorns, dried berries, small branches, cinnamon sticks. The final touch, a dusting of artificial snow or a sprinkle of glitter to make the whole arrangement sparkle. You'd place the centerpiece on the dining table for Christmas dinner. The candles would be lit, casting warm light across the table. The evergreen would release its scent. The metallic pine cones would catch the candlelight and shimmer. It was beautiful in a homemade, natural way. Making the centerpiece was part of the Christmas preparation. It wasn't something you bought at a store and placed on the table. It was something you created, gathering materials, painting, arranging, adjusting until it looked just right. Kids would help collect pine cones. Everyone would have opinions on the arrangement. More gold pine cones on this side. The candle needs to be taller. Add more holly. It was a family project that resulted in a centerpiece unique to your home, made from materials gathered from your own environment. In the 1970s, progressive dinners were a popular neighborhood tradition, a multi-course meal where each course was served at a different house. Here's how it worked. Neighbors would coordinate ahead of time, usually 4 or 5 houses participating. Each house would be responsible for one course of the Christmas meal. House 1, appetizers, house. 2, salad house. 3, main course house. 4, dessert house. 5, coffee and after-dinner drinks. The entire neighborhood group, maybe 15-20 people, would start at house 1 for appetizers. Everyone would gather in the living room, chat, nibble on cheese and crackers, shrimp cocktail, stuffed mushrooms, whatever the host had prepared. After 30-45 minutes, the group would bundle up and walk to house 2 for salad. This was the fun part, walking together as a group through the neighborhood, chatting, laughing, waving at neighbors who weren't participating but watched from their windows. At house 2, everyone would sit at the dining table, or tables. Some hosts would borrow card tables and chairs to accommodate everyone, and eat salad together. Then they'd walk to house 3 for the main course, usually turkey or ham, with all the traditional sides. This was the longest stop, lasting an hour or more. Then to house 4 for dessert, pies, cookies, cakes, all homemade. Finally, to house 5 for coffee, tea, and cordials, a chance to relax, digest, and wind down the evening. The entire progressive dinner would take 4 or 5 hours. You'd walk miles through the neighborhood. You'd eat at 5 different houses. You'd experience 5 different hosting styles, 5 different decor schemes, 5 different atmospheres. It was communal, festive, exhausting, but it was also incredibly bonding. You'd see inside your neighbors' homes. You'd experience their hospitality. You'd work together to create one shared meal across multiple locations. Kids would walk with parents, excited to see different houses decorated for Christmas. Teenagers would hang out together, moving as a pack between houses. The hosts would work for days, preparing their course, cleaning the house, decorating, cooking, setting the table. There was pride in hosting your course well, and there was cooperation. If House 3's oven broke, House 2 would offer theirs. If someone got sick, another family would step in. Progressive dinners required planning, coordination, cooperation. Everyone had to commit to the schedule. You couldn't skip a course. You couldn't arrive late. The whole group moved together, but when it worked, when everyone executed their course perfectly and the group flowed smoothly from house to house, it was magical. In the 1970s, most Christmas stockings were homemade, sewn from felt or fabric by grandmothers and mothers, personalized with each family member's name stitched or glued onto the cuff. These weren't generic red stockings bought from a store. These were unique, handcrafted stockings that became part of the family's Christmas identity. Grandma would start in October or November, pulling out felt in traditional Christmas colors. Red, green, white, sometimes gold or silver. She'd draw a stocking pattern on newspaper, cut it out, trace it onto felt, and cut 2 identical stocking shapes. Then came the sewing. She'd stitch the 2 pieces together, sometimes by hand, sometimes on a sewing machine. Leaving the top open, she'd add a cuff, usually in a contrasting color, and decorate it. Some stockings had sequins sewn on in patterns, snowflakes, Christmas trees, stars. Some had felt cutouts glued on, a Santa face, a reindeer, a candy cane, but the most important detail, the name. Grandma would carefully cut out felt letters, spelling each family member's name in glue or stitch them onto the cuff. Jennifer, in white, felt on a red stocking. Michael, in green, felt on a white stocking. Sometimes she'd embroider the names instead, loopy script in gold or silver thread. Each stocking was made specifically for one person. It had your name. It was yours. On Christmas Eve, you'd hang your stocking on the mantel, or the stair railing, or doorknobs if you didn't have a fireplace. And on Christmas morning, you'd find it bulging with small gifts and candy. But the stocking itself was as much a tradition as what was inside it. Year after year, you'd use the same stocking. You'd recognize it instantly. That's mine. The red one with my name. As kids grew up and moved away, their stockings would remain, hung on the mantel every Christmas, even if they weren't home, a symbol that they were still part of the family. When someone got married, Grandma would make a new stocking for the spouse, welcoming them into the family through the gift of a personalized stocking. When babies were born, Grandma would make tiny stockings with their names, the baby's first Christmas stocking, handmade with love. These stockings became heirlooms. They'd last for decades. Felt might pill, colors might fade, names might fray, but they'd survive. Families would carefully pack them away each January, storing them in special boxes, handling them gently. But homemade felt stockings had drawbacks. They were uneven. Grandma's sewing skills varied. Some were perfectly shaped, others were lopsided. The felt would stretch over time. Lighting ceremonies in the 1970s, Town Square. Christmas tree lighting ceremonies were major community events. The kind that drew hundreds of people, marked the official start of the Christmas season, and created a shared moment of celebration. Every town had a tree, usually a large evergreen planted in the town square or courthouse lawn, or a massive cut tree erected in the center of town. In early December, an event would be scheduled: Annual Christmas Tree Lighting Ceremony, December 5th, 6 p.m. The entire town would show up. Families would arrive early, bundled in winter coats and scarves, claiming spots around the square. Local businesses might set up stands selling hot chocolate and cookies. The high school choir would assemble on temporary risers. At exactly 6 p.m., the mayor would take the stage, or just a microphone set up near the tree, and give a brief speech about community, tradition, and the Christmas spirit. Then the high school choir would sing carols. "O come all ye faithful, Silent Night, hark the herald angels sing," and the crowd would join in, voices rising into the cold night air. As the final carol ended, the mayor would lead a countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then click. The tree would light up. Hundreds of colored bulbs, C7 bulbs, big and bright, would illuminate simultaneously, transforming the dark tree into a glowing beacon visible for blocks. Some towns scaled down, smaller trees, less elaborate ceremonies, fewer attendees. Others stopped entirely. We just can't justify the cost. Nobody wants to organize it anymore. Hosting progressive dinners, making stockings, attending tree lightings, making felt ornaments. If you remember even half of these, you didn't just celebrate Christmas in the 1970s, you worked for it, because Christmas back then wasn't easy. It was labor-intensive, time-consuming, and required participation from every member of the family. But it was also meaningful. There was something about the effort, the time spent together, the handmade traditions, the rituals passed down through generations that made Christmas feel earned. Today, celebrating is easier. Pre-made everything. Online shopping, streaming movies, one-click ordering, and maybe that's progress, but maybe we've also lost something, because those 70s activities weren't just about celebrating Christmas, they were about creating it together. If you want more nostalgic deep dives like this, subscribe and hit the bell, because we've got plenty more forgotten traditions to uncover. Merry Christmas. 70s style.